and businesses had to change the way that they thought and approached learning. As we move slowly back into our new normal in 2021, digital learning and the lessons that we've learned over the last year, from learner confidence and tutor upskilling through to technical and governance capabilities, are now key baselines of knowledge that we can build on for the future. The focus of this presentation is the delivery of blended learning. This method has many considerations and models that can be used, from assessing technology capability, effective delivery resources, and competent facilitators, through to the management and monitoring of both content and training from a learner perspective, stakeholder requirements, and return on investment, to name just a few. So, moving on to the future trends, I would just like to share some statistics that reflect the impact of a blended learning method. In comparison to an effective 100% classroom-based course, 100% online delivery is not ideal as a direct substitute. 30 to 50% of lesson content should be timetabled to be delivered effectively within a blended learning model as online, and 50 to 70% of lesson content should be timetabled to be delivered effectively within a blended model as face-to-face classroom-based. Blended learning is now more affordable. Up to 90% less energy is needed, and there are 85% fewer CO2 emissions per person. Approximately 80% of learners prefer blended learning models in comparison to 100% classroom-based environments, and around 60% of teachers in an academic environment believe that blended learning models have helped improve students' ability. So, what can you do as an organisation? Those of you who've attended our previous webinar on the new normal for learning may recognise the 6 E's that SGS Academy work to when undertaking new projects and course development. It is important that you approach your training development and delivery holistically and consider all aspects of the learner's requirements as much as the actual training content itself. If you would like further information on this, you can download our recording, which is available on our website. By using the 6 E's, SGS Academy has implemented an effective digital system to enhance our offerings to our employees and clients by digitising our courses and offering these through virtual instructor-led training using online platforms such as Zoom and Adobe Connect. You will recognise the incorporation of these 6 E's in the creation and development of all of our learning, and you will be able to identify these throughout the following information that Laura will be presenting. Here are the main learning methodologies that can be used as a standalone training course or as part of a blended solution. The methods need to be user-friendly with a clear learner journey and end result. There are, of course, pros and cons to any delivery method. This webinar is focused on the blended learning. I would now like to pass you over to my colleague, Laura.
Thanks, Amanda. Hello, everyone. I'm Laura, and I'm going to take you through the next part of the webinar. I'm going to start with the definition and benefits of blended learning. Blended learning is a combination of a variety of training methods using educational materials carefully integrated to produce a course that meets both knowledge and skills requirements. The benefits of blended learning include it being cost-effective, where trainer costs are reduced with the amount of time in the classroom being less and there being more emphasis on the learner completing reading, e-learning or other options as a supplement. There's improved training experience. So the variety of methodologies used in the program ensures that learners stay engaged and motivated throughout. And the training can be adapted to different learning styles, which enhances learner engagement. If you can meet all learning styles, the success of the learner increases. Performance can be tracked by the LMS as the learner progresses, and it includes combined online access with social instructional interactions. Now let's look at the types of blended learning. There are a number of different types of blended learning, and the three that I'm going to discuss today are the flipped classroom, the flex model, and the rotation model. For the flipped classroom, rather than in usual practice where everything is taught in the classroom and the work is given to complete after the session, learners are introduced to the content at home. So this is where they've put what they've learned into practice in the classroom. This method allows the learners to grasp the content first and then practice and further develop their knowledge in the classroom with the support of the trainer. The flex model. The learners complete the base of their learning online at their own pace. They then attend training, which could include small group activities or projects, and the trainer supports them. A way to view this is that the main knowledge requirements could be completed using e-learning and assignments. And then the skills requirements could be covered in the classroom using activities, role plays, and group work. And finally, the rotation model. So this is where learners rotate between online learning, group instruction, and assignments. This could be module by module of learning, where the learner completes the online learning, then attends the classroom, and then completes an assignment to sign off that module. Once that module is completed, they then move on to the next module, and they repeat the process, and that's where the rotation happens. 6 E's for blended learning. So as part of our initial examination using the 6 E's, we considered the following. We had to examine the impact of COVID and how blended learning can support with continuing to deliver effective training. Explore. So we explored the different learning options available and which one will best suit our requirements, whether that be the flipped classroom, the flex model, the rotation model, or a different option. Ensure. The blended learning has been designed with the learner's journey in mind. For example, we asked ourselves, will each component ensure that our learners meet the required outcomes of the course? And have they been designed together or separately? Enable. The learners must be able to access the training. So we had to consider that we needed to provide our learners with full joining instructions and an explanation of the software requirements. Establish. We developed course control procedures, process management, and clear guidelines to train our stakeholders on the requirements for delivering successful blended learning programs. And evaluate. We needed to gather learner feedback, affiliate feedback, and consider the full business impact of creating and delivering blended learning solutions. So now let's look at some key considerations for blended learning. So we're going to look at 3. We're going to look at the purpose, the learner journey, course control, and process management. So the purpose, when we delve into this deeper, we're going to look at what's the purpose of the blended learning. Why are we creating that blended program? Has there been a request from one of your stakeholders? Are you finding that due to COVID, you're now no longer able to spend as much time in the classroom, so you're having to adapt your programs that you've created already? So just what is that overall purpose, and what does that look like? That's then going to feed in directly to the learner journey. So the learner journey, what do we want the learners to get out of that course? But not only what do we want them to get out of it, but actually what is their experience going to be? So are they going to complete e-learning to start off with? Are we going to get them to read a supplement, an article, and then delve into some of that information and information in a classroom or a virtual training session? So just what does that overall learner journey and picture look like? And what are our expectations of that? We're then going to move on to the course control and process management. This is really one of the key points, and here we'll actually look at, okay, how is that program managed? And what considerations do we have to think about when looking at the course control and process management, whether that be admin, whether that be the tutor requirements, or even the marketing of the course. So there's a number of different things that we'll cover in this next section of the presentation. So the purpose. So what is the purpose of the blended learning that you want to develop or deliver? Is it that you want to improve the way that you deliver your training programs and enhance that learner experience? Is it that you want to enrich the learner journey? Maybe you've got more learners accessing your training digitally and you want to produce that blended learning program. And you want to adapt and go from e-learning and classroom-based training, or you receive some feedback maybe from your learners and they want to grasp some of that knowledge prior to attending the course, and this is just a different option for you to be able to create that picture of their learner journey. Other things to consider when you're thinking about the purpose is, why are you developing that blended learning? What does it mean to you? Has it been a request from stakeholders? Are you having to use the classroom less due to the current restrictions due to COVID? Or is it just that you want to produce something new, vibrant and interactive for your learners to attend? Now, considering the purpose is really important, and this is going to ensure that you develop the right blended program for your learners. And here at SGS, our aim is to use blended learning to enhance the learner experience. So we use the Flex model as an example to deliver knowledge components of our courses digitally, and then we cover the skills objectives, whether that be face-to-face or in the virtual classroom. And the aim is to use a variety of methodologies which keep the content engaging and interactive, whilst motivating our learners to perform at their highest level and learn successfully. And the main aim of this blended program is to ensure that our learners and their outcomes are positive, that they have the best learning experience possible. So next, the learner journey. What is your expected learner journey for that blended learning? Is it that you want to develop or deliver a journey which involves e-learning classroom? Maybe you want to include assignments into that as well, and you can integrate that within your LMS. Or maybe you've had a request from a learner following feedback that they want to maybe read some content before they attend the course, and you're going, okay, yeah, that makes sense. We can put that onto our course, and actually involve maybe some e-learning as well to create that blended learner journey. You also need to consider why. Why are you developing a blended learning program? And is it to improve the way you deliver your training programs? Is it to enhance the learner experience and enrich their journey? What does it look like, and why are we developing that? Our aim at SGS is for our blended journey to involve a combination of digital and face-to-face or built sessions. So we've integrated that within our LMS to include e-learning and then also the face-to-face or VILT training. And I'll go on to an example of this next. So here is an example learner journey with one of our blended programs, the QMS Lead Auditor course. We currently offer this course as 5 days classroom-based training or 10 VILT training sessions as approved by IRCA, or as the blended program. Now the blended program consists of 4 prerequisite e-learning modules. We then have 2 pathways where the learner can either complete a 3-day face-to-face course or 6 virtual training sessions. The aim for both pathways is for the learning outcomes to be delivered as knowledge and skills objectives. So the knowledge objectives covered from the 4 e-learning modules, and the skills objectives covered from the face-to-face or virtual training sessions. In the next few slides, I'm going to show you how this program works. So the journey that our learners take, they start by working through each online module. They download and read the learner guide. They then complete the self-evaluation and submit that online. Now the tutor that's assigned to them will be required to mark the self-evaluation, and we've allocated a 2 working day period for that. And once marked, the learner can then move on to the next module. And what they'll do is they'll basically receive a notification from us to say that, or the tutor, to say that that self-evaluation has been completed and that they can move on to that next module. They'll then repeat this for e-learning module 2. So again, they'll work through each online module. They'll download and read the learner guide. They'll then complete the self-evaluation and submit online. And the tutor that's assigned to this course will be required to mark the self-evaluation within a set time period for this course, 2 working days. And once they've marked that, the learner will receive the notification that they've completed that self-evaluation, and they can then move on to that next module, module 3. They then complete and repeat the same process for module 3, and then they move on to module 4. And finally repeated for module 4. So once they've completed module 4, the learner can then move on to the 3 days face-to-face or the 6 virtual training sessions, whichever journey they're on. This is where they'll recap on what they've learned from the 4 e-learning modules, and it will also allow the trainer to assess their current level of knowledge. And if required, the trainer may look to cover some additional content to ensure that they're where they need to be at this stage of the training. From that, they'll then move on to complete the group activities, case studies, and role-play exercises. And as long as they've performed well, they'll then pass the continuous assessment. And once they pass the continuous assessment, they'll then move on to look to complete the final exam and hopefully pass it. So in summary, this example uses the blended learning flex model. This is where the learner works at their own pace. The tutor marks and provides feedback on their work. They then attend face-to-face or virtual training workshops, and they complete and pass the examination. So this combination of training looks to enrich the learner journey by utilising engaging content with interactive class-based activities. And remember, so what we looked to do was include the knowledge requirements as those 4 e-learning prerequisite modules, and then the skills-based content within the face-to-face or virtual training sessions. And thirdly, course control and process management. What do you need to consider when looking at your course control and process management. Will these courses be delivered locally, nationally, or globally? Who will be delivering the courses, and do they have the sufficient skills required to deliver that blended program? How will you manage the blended learner journey? And will your LMS support that true blended learner program? Here at SGS, we've developed a robust process which includes detailed course control procedures, training and process management. For example, training and communication. When a new blend is developed, we schedule training with all of the required stakeholders to ensure the full learner journey meets our requirements, to ensure that everyone has the skills and knowledge they require. Course control procedures are developed which cover course scheduling, the learner journey and their enrolment, joining instructions and pre-course information, tutor requirements such as training for marking and providing feedback, and also administration responsibilities and managing the learner journey. By managing these processes effectively, we are able to maintain our accreditations and confirm that our courses are delivered consistently across the globe. So to summarise the key considerations, it's important to identify the purpose for developing the blended learner programme. We need to consider the full learner journey and develop the training materials based around that to ensure that it's a success. And we have to have in place specific course control procedures and process management to ensure a fluid and successful programme. For the purpose, consider the purpose to your blended learning. Is it to improve the way you deliver your training programmes? Is it to enhance the learner experience and enrich the learner journey? And with the learner journey, you've got to remember that good quality design is key to ensuring an effective and interactive learner journey. So we don't just put this bit of reading with this course, we're actually developing it all as one fluid course to ensure that it's interactive and engaging for our learners. And then course control and process management to support the rollout of the blended learning programs and to ensure their success. It's important to have those clear course control procedures and processes managed effectively and efficiently. SGS lessons learned. So what have we learned? So training is imperative to the success and implementation of the blended learning programs. It's important to understand the capabilities of your LMS. The integration of the blended program into the LMS makes the course a true blend. And the learner journey matters. It's important to really consider that learner journey. So just here's some questions and considerations to ask yourself when planning to deliver blended learning programs. So firstly, what are the capabilities of your LMS? What journey do you want your learners to take and why? How can I ensure my learners feel engaged throughout the delivery? And finally, is the learner journey interactive, engaging, and does it enhance the learning outcomes? Moving on to my last slide of the webinar, the Learning Reimagined Blended Mind Map. The Mind Map provides you with 6 key points to consider as you transition to blended learning. You start by using the 6 E's for blended learning. Review the requirements for your business. Examine. To examine your business requirements for blended learning. Is it to meet the short-term need for replacing a reduction in face-to-face training during the COVID pandemic? Or is it part of a wider business strategy? Explore. Take the time to define your business requirements and prioritise them. When looking to develop blended learning programs, review requirements for the journey you want your learners to take. Ensure. Ensure that your learners will be able to access your blending learning with ease. Enable. Enable your learners, management team and stakeholders by training them and upskilling them on the blended learning strategy. This will support in breaking down any barriers and will provide buy-in and overall adoption of that new delivery method. Establish. To establish a robust support model, including course control procedures and process management, and focus on defining clear process flows and documentation for course development. Evaluate. Evaluate both your learners, their satisfaction and knowledge retention once they've completed that blended learning program, but also feedback from stakeholders as you work with them on course development. This will allow you to continually adapt and improve, which will in turn increase overall satisfaction. And once you've considered the 6 E's, you can then move on to identify your purpose, the learner journey, and then complete your course development of that blended learner program. You'll then be able to implement and then evaluate the overall satisfaction of your learners and other stakeholders. Thank you for your time today, and I'll now pass you over to Amanda.
Thank you, Laura. Hopefully, the last few slides have given you some food for thought and helped you with looking towards implementing your blended learning policy. If you need any support with any points mentioned during this presentation, do not hesitate to contact us for a further discussion, as we do have many years of training experience from individual learning requirements through to global corporate organisation rollouts, providing one-off training courses through to blended solutions internally and externally in multiple languages. We deliver standard courses against many course categories within the majority of industries and have experience in working with clients to bespoke or tailor courses to meet their specific needs or requirements. Thank you for listening to the presentation today. You will see on this slide there are a number of different ways that you can contact us if you would like to discuss any specific needs further. We have also received some questions through the chat, so we will move on to answer as many questions as we can during the allocated time. Thank you. So we're going to start with the first question from the questions that we've received through the chat. So firstly, I'd like to pass this question over to Laura. The question is, you mentioned about 3 types of blended learning. Can you please advise which is the most common and which would you recommend for better knowledge retention?
Thanks, Amanda. Yes, so I would generally say that the most common or well-known blended learning model is the flipped classroom, where the learners are introduced to the content at home first. Now, what I mean by introduced is that they literally have a snippet of that topic, and then they go on to learn more about that specific topic in the classroom or in a built session. I think that answers the question later on as well. Generally, we find that this is one of the most common blended learning models, and I generally think it works because it gives the learners that overview of that topic first, and then enables them to actually get into the topic in a lot more detail with the support of the trainer or the instructor. Now, for our needs here at SGS, I spoke about the flex model. However, it completely depends on the blended program that you potentially want to develop and deliver, and the needs of your learners and stakeholders.
Okay, thank you, Laura. I can take the next question. The next question we've received is, can you please advise which skills should have a tutor delivering blended learning? So which skills should a tutor have when delivering blended learning? I think it does depend on the type of blended package, blended solution that you're putting into place. As we've talked about on previous webinars and incorporated really into this, there's e-learning, your face-to-face, and your virtual instructor-led training. So different methods of training delivery will require different tutor skills. So please go back to have a look at our previous webinars on the different types of skills. However, the one thing that is imperative, if you're running a blended program and you have a number of different modules using different methods, you do need to ensure that every tutor does have an overarching view on what the objective of that full blended model solution is, in order for every tutor to be aligned in the topic and the content, even though the different modes of delivery may change. Okay, thank you, Laura. Okay, so I'll pass the next question to Laura. How are course materials adapted for blended learning? What would you recommend is the best way to learn online versus offline?
So again, for this one, I would say it's completely dependent on your blended learning program. However, I would view it as, rather than adapting materials, we look at developing a program from the start. So when we're looking to develop the program, it would be a case of, okay, potentially, what do we want our knowledge objectives to be, what do we want the skills objectives to be, and how is that going to look as that bigger picture? Are we going to have, like you saw in the example, are we going to have modules of e-learning that's then going to complement the actual or classroom-based work, or are you going to look at maybe having classroom-based work with assignments, which can still be considered as that blended learning? I would definitely say, obviously, there needs to be a adaptation for the VILC compared to your face-to-face delivery, because delivering virtually is very different to obviously being in front of the trainer and in front of the learners. But generally, I think it starts from the beginning in the planning and looking at how you're going to split that blended program up into those knowledge and skills objectives.
Okay, thank you, Laura. The next question, is there a time frame or duration recommended for a blended course? I think this is very dependent on the criteria for that blended course. If you're running an accredited course, which Laura talked about in the presentation, it has to be a 40 hours tutor-led delivery time. So in order for it to be a blended course, you would need 40 hours of either tutor-led time or e-learning or remote learning time. Alternatively, you can look at different ways of blending, whether you're looking at your skills and your objectives, your knowledge skills or your knowledge objectives. It's very much, there's no specific time frame for a blended course, but obviously just take into consideration things like with your virtual instructor-led training or e-learning, to make sure that they're done in bite-sized chunks so that your learners do have the best opportunity to retain knowledge and not get technology fatigue really by being on a Zoom call for 3 or 4 hours solidly. So to make sure you have breaks and to make sure you have reflection time in between your modules as well, and that it does all become part of the blend. Okay, I do have a question from Peter Sibelius asking about the source of the statements. Peter, if it's okay with you, I'd like to sort of connect with you offline with that, and I can give you details of the sources. That would be great. The next question I have is, the flex and the flipped almost appear the same, only that the flex consists of SGA, while there is no SGA in the flipped. Is my understanding correct? Laura, are you happy to pick that one up, please?
Yeah, of course. So really, I touched on it earlier, but the main difference here is that the flipped model is where learners are introduced to the topic at home. They don't cover the topic in a large amount of detail. It's simply a snippet or an introduction to what is being taught, potentially in the classroom or as virtual training. And then what happens with that is that the tutor or trainer is basically takes them through the classroom or virtual, and they actually go through that topic in a lot more detail. So they're very different. So the flex model, they're potentially learning those knowledge objectives that you want them to learn.